Something's wearing my parents' skin, and it's learning how to smile. 2 weeks ago, Adam woke up in a hospital bed. They told him he was in a car accident. He didn't remember the crash, just a blinding flash of light. Since being discharged, things have felt wrong, not just slightly off, deeply off, like the world is wearing a mask, and Adam is the only one who can see the seams. Little things were off at first, easy to dismiss, but today, something happened, something he can't explain, and now he knows for sure. Whatever this is, it isn't just in his head. This is real, and he's scared as fuck. At first, nothing seemed too weird. He'd never spent a night in a hospital before, so waking up in a sterile, fluorescent-lit room was bound to feel unsettling. He brushed it off. His parents were more doting than usual, but for people whose son had almost died, they took it surprisingly well, at least until they got to the car. That's when the concern cracked, and the disappointment seeped through. They scolded Adam for wrecking his 2003 Saturn shitbox, calling him reckless. The words sounded right, worried, even empathetic, but something was off. His mom's face kept shifting, like she couldn't settle on how she was supposed to feel. His dad, though, he barely moved. He sat rigid, staring straight ahead, as if turning his head wasn't an option. But Adam could feel him watching him. His gaze lingered in the rearview mirror, heavy and cold. Each time Adam glanced up, he'd catch his dad's eyes for just a split second before his dad snapped them back to the road. But Adam knew. He knew his dad never really looked away. After the 6th time, he stopped looking away too. The mirror became a silent, one-way standoff. As Adam waited for his dad to scold him through it again, he didn't so much as glance at it for the rest of the drive. It was a short drive. None of this was cause for concern, really. Nothing that followed was all that crazy. But when Adam got home, he felt a shift, coming from the harsh fluorescence of the hospital and the golden stretch of road outside. Adam wasn't prepared for the cool dimness of the house. It wasn't dark exactly. Mom always kept the shades open. She liked the light, but now they weren't quite shut, just not open enough, like someone had hesitated halfway and left them there. His family didn't linger. After some pleasantries, Mom disappeared into the master bedroom. Dad went back to work, and Adam was left alone on the living room couch. He popped a Tylenol, took a few hits from his pen in the bathroom, and settled in. The rest of the day was mostly silent, aside from the occasional sound of Mom's bedroom door opening and closing. He wasted time scrolling on his phone, barely aware of the shifting sunlight, until a beam stretched across the room and hit his eyes. He turned from his pillow to the armrest, bought himself another 20 minutes. Then another beam crept up, warming his feet like some kind of passive-aggressive warning from the sun. All right, message received. Adam sighed, peeled himself off the couch, and mumbled, "Fuck it, you win," before dragging himself to his room. He was asleep before he could think too much about it. The week that followed was unusual, to say the least. It was summer break, and normally Adam would be stocking shelves at Walmart or messing around with his friends. But doctor's orders were pretty straightforward. You've got a concussion. Don't be an idiot. No stand-in for long periods. No heavy lifting. No unnecessary risks. Fine by him. He got a doctor's note, a couple of weeks off, and a temporary escape from the joys of minimum wage labor. It wasn't the end of the world. Part-time jobs come and go. For now, Adam just had some headaches and a free pass to lay low. Better that than risking something worse, whether it was from dreading work or from one of his friends intentionally checking a basketball into his skull because they were over-competitive degenerates. Adam didn't really care to go outside much. The weather hadn't been as sunny as the first day he got back. Clouds hung low, thick and unmoving, like they were pressing down on the neighborhood. Even when the sun did break through, it was this weak, watery light that barely seemed to touch the ground. It just made staying inside feel more justified. So he did. He moved the Xbox from the basement to his room. Normally, that would have been a no-go, but if anyone asked, Adam would just plead the concussion card and call it a win. No one even commented on it, which felt strange, like they should have, but didn't. He just holed up, gaming, eating, zoning out in front of Skyrim lore, videos, in the living room, whatever. Aside from family dinners, Adam didn't talk to his parents much. The conversations at the table were dull, barely conversations at all. Dad was working later than usual, often slipping away right after eating. Mom was around, he knew that much. He heard her, the bedroom doors opening and closing, the creak of the floorboards when she walked, the soft shuff of her feet brushing across the carpet upstairs. But Adam barely saw her, not in the kitchen, not in the living room, not even when he grabbed snacks at night. Come to think of it, Adam didn't think he ever saw her downstairs, aside from dinner, some groceries spoiled, which was weird, because Mom was normally on top of that kind of thing. When Adam pointed it out, she took him shopping, which was actually kinda nice. He got way more say in what they stocked the fridge with than usual. That was a win. But as they wandered the aisles, Adam noticed something. People were staring at him, not in a casual passing way, intensely, like they were trying to memorize his face, or maybe like they weren't sure what they were looking at. Each time Adam caught someone, they snapped their head away, like they hadn't been watching at all. But the feeling stayed. Not a single person looked like they could hold a normal expression on their faces. It was like they shifted through raw emotions during the most mundane tasks. Adam began to feel in danger. And worse, he started to notice something else. As he and Mom passed people, he swore he could hear them pivot to watch him after they walked by. He never actually saw it happen, but he could hear it. The soft squeak of a shoe turning, the faint rustle of fabric shifting. He wanted to ask Mom if she noticed anything, but the words stuck in his throat. If she hadn't, he'd sound crazy. If she had, Adam didn't want to know. He tried to shrug it off. He'd been a complete goblin for the past week, barely keeping up with shaving. And yeah, his facial hair was patchy as hell. Maybe he just looked like a mess. Maybe he was imagining things. Whatever. When Adam got back home, he hopped on Xbox, made plans with some friends for later in the week, and told himself he'd get cleaned up by then. Everything was fine. Everything was fine. 2 days passed. Nothing noteworthy. Just his growing awareness of how off everything felt. Mom was moving around more. At least, he thinks she was. He'd hear her footsteps, soft shuffling noises that always seemed to stop right outside his door. The first few times, Adam brushed it off. Maybe she was just passing by. Maybe she was listening for signs that he was awake. But the more he paid attention, the more it felt deliberate. The house was dim, sure, but his room wasn't. He kept his bay window shades open, letting in just enough light to make it feel normal, or at least less like the rest of the house. The hallway outside, though, it was always in shadow. There was only one time of day where light from the high windows in the living room even touched his door, and it wasn't now. That's why Adam knew he shouldn't have seen anything. And yet, he did. He heard her. That same soft shuffle. Adam glanced over from the edge of his bed, half expecting nothing. Just another trick of his nerves. But for a split second he saw them. Her toenails. Just at the edge of the door. The instant he registered them, they shot back. Too fast. So fast it was like they hadn't been there at all. But he knew what he saw. The carpet where they had been left the faintest depression before, slowly rising back into place. Adam's stomach twisted. Okay, that was it. No more dab pen. No more convincing himself he wasn't tripping out when clearly he was seeing shit. He waited, listened, heard her shuffle away. Her door clicked shut. Adam exhaled, rubbed his face, and stood up. Enough of this. He needed to get out of the house. Needed to see his friends. James, Nikki D, and Tyler. The goal was simple. Sober up, ground himself, and maybe, just maybe, bring up what was going on. Over Xbox, they'd all sounded completely normal. He'd only mentioned a few things in passing. Nothing that set off any alarms for them. Most of their talks had just been about girls from their school, memes, and bullshitting in Rainbow Six Siege lobbies. Maybe Adam was just overthinking. Maybe everything was fine, but as he grabbed his keys and headed for the door, he couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere upstairs, Mom was listening. Obviously, driving wasn't an option. His car was totaled. His parents handed him $250 for the scrap it was apparently worth, and that was that. So, Adam dusted off his old bike from the shed in the back. He didn't even glance at the house on his way out. Didn't need to see his creepy-ass mom peeking from some upstairs window, like a horror movie extra. If he did, he'd probably swerve straight into traffic just to avoid dealing with it. Instead, he shoved the thoughts down and let himself believe, for just a little longer, that he was just tripping balls. That was safer. That was better. Besides, his odds were good. He still had headaches. He was still a little stoned. He was still taking Tylenol. Put it all together and maybe his brain was just running like a laggy Xbox. He rode up to the high school football field in about 20 minutes and hopped the fence. Everyone was already there. James, Nikki D, and Tyler. And what followed? It was awesome. The dap-ups were a little stiff at first, but once they got going, everything fell into place. They had a pump, a football, which lasted about 10 minutes before it needed air again, and a frisbee. The sun was bright for the first time since Adam got out of the hospital, and for the first time in days, he felt good. He'd shaved, he was surrounded by his friends, and he started to think, no, he started to hope, that maybe he'd just been missing out on real, in-person socialization. He almost fell for it. He almost let himself believe everything was fine. They played for hours. Eventually, they were wiped, ready to debrief before heading home. Adam was closest to the corner of the field where the old water pump was, so he went first, yanked the lever, let the water rush out, cupped his hands, drank. The others chatted behind him, their voices blending with the soft splash of the pump. Refreshed, he wandered back to where they'd been playing frisbee, flopped onto the grass, and pulled out his phone. The sun was brutal, washing out the screen. He tilted it, angling downward to block the glare, squinting as he reached for the power button. And then he froze, because in the black reflection of his phone screen, he saw them, all three of them, standing at the water pump, staring at the back of his head. James and Tyler's faces were wrong. Their jaws hung open, too wide, far past what should have been possible. It wasn't just slack, it was distorted. Their bottom lips curled downward just enough to reveal rows of teeth. Their heads tilted forward, eyes locked onto him, shoulders hunched, arms dangling too loosely at their sides. They looked like something out of a nightmare, like The Scream, but worse. Nicky wasn't as bad. He was staring too, but his face shifted, the same way Adam's mom's did when she picked him up from the hospital, like he couldn't quite get it right. And yet, their conversation hadn't stopped. Their voices came out perfectly, flowing like normal, but James and Tyler weren't moving their mouths. The water pump was still running. Adam had his phone up for maybe a second, but his whole body jerked like he'd been stabbed. His fingers fumbled and his phone slipped from his hands, landing in the grass with a soft thud. Nicky asked if Adam was good. He could barely think, barely breathe. Beads of sweat formed on his temples. He swallowed hard, forced a smile, forced the words out. Yeah, I'm great. And he turned to face them. Normal. They looked normal. Everything was normal. But his stomach twisted into knots, because Adam knew what he saw. And for the first time since he got home, he realized he had nowhere to run. You sure you're good? He can't even remember who asked him that. Yeah, I'm good, man. My head's just pounding. I think I should go home. That part was true. It was pounding. Nicky frowned. You need a ride. Internally. Fuck, no. Externally. Nah, bro. What? You like driving dudes around in your car or something? You into teenage boys? I got this. The other two laughed. The tension cracked just a little. They all started getting ready to part ways, but Adam dragged it out, pacing around their cars, making jokes, tossing the football over the hoods. Anything to stall. He kept stealing glances at the mirrors and windows, waiting for another glimpse at what was under their veils. Nothing. The first few times Adam swore he saw their eyes dart away from his in the reflections, like they knew what he was doing. Then, it was like they just stopped looking towards him altogether. No matter how he angled himself, how fast he glanced, he never caught them like he had on the field. And yet, looking back, Adam can't shake the feeling, like they knew exactly where he was looking, like they had just found ways to stare at him from difficult angles, without him ever catching their eyes. He's just glad they let him go home. He doesn't know what the end goal is, but it feels like he's being bled out, played with, before he's eaten. Adam managed to steady his breathing on the ride back. As he pulled up to his house, he veered toward the spare garage, an old, detached structure, barely used except for storage. He figured he'd leave his bike in there for now, just so he wouldn't have to linger outside any longer than necessary. He wheeled up to the side door, gripping the rusted handle. The lock had long since broken, and with a firm push, the door groaned open. Dust and stale air hit Adam first, the scent of old cardboard and forgotten junk. The space was dim, faintly illuminated by streetlights filtering through the grimy windows. He rolled his bike inside, careful not to trip over scattered tools and warped furniture, when he froze. In the center of the garage, right where it shouldn't be, was his car, perfectly intact, not totaled, not even scratched. His breath caught in his throat. He took a slow step forward, fingers brushing the hood. Cold, real, tangible. The last Adam heard of this car, he was being told it had been wrecked, scrapped. His parents handed him $250 and said that's all it was worth. So why was it here? He circled to the driver's side and peered inside. The keys weren't in the ignition, but they dangled from the dash. Something was off. The seat, normally adjusted to fit Adam, was pushed all the way back, like someone much taller had been sitting there. A low tremor crawled up his spine. He did a quick fluid check, ran his hands over the tires, making sure it'd be ready if he needed it, then jogged back to the house. But the second he stepped through the front door, it hit him again. Rapid, aggressive shuffling, door slam. Then, in a voice too casual, too normal to be real, "Honey, you missed dinner. Want me to heat some up for you?" "Nope. It's okay, Mom. I'll handle it." The living room TV was blue-screened, casting a sickly glow over the open floor plan. Adam didn't dare mess with his parents' setup. At this point, they had to know. He was onto them, and he would do nothing to disturb the peace. He grabbed some snacks from the fridge, went straight to his room, locked the door, dug out his old iPod Generation 6 from middle school, buried in a shoebox, and set it to charge. For a while, Adam just sat there, listening. It was too quiet. He FaceTimed the iPod from his phone, hesitating, debating whether he should even leave his room. The upstairs layout was simple. 4 rooms. His was first on the left at the top of the stairs. His parents' was last on the right, at the very end. A closet where they kept their detergent and towels. His bathroom was the last door on the left. The plan was simple. A strategic iPod drop-off during his next bathroom run. He executed flawlessly, waiting for the next round of patrolling before slipping out. He cracked the closet door just enough to give his iPod a view down the hall, plugged the charger in beneath the bottom shelf, and left it there. A hidden eye, a way to see what his parents really looked like when they thought no one was watching. Adam almost regrets this decision. It seemed fine when he got back into his room and locked the door. He quietly angled his dresser in front of it, wedging his desk chair as tightly as he could under the handle. Too much movement. He heard his parents' door fly open, slamming into the inside wall of their bedroom. By the time Adam grabbed his phone, she was already there, standing at the end of the hall, facing his door, swaying. She was past the weird shifting face that Nikki had. Whatever this is, they're stages. Her jaw wasn't just distended, it was stretched beyond its limit. The skin pulled so tight, It dangled with every sway of her body. Even from here, Adam could see the bags under her eyes. Not just dark circles, but loose, sagging folds that drooped to her upper lip, exposing way too much dry pink eyelid. Her hair, thin and patchy, clung to her scalp with a greasy sheen from the glow of the living room TV and the dim light spilling from the master bedroom. Her arms didn't hang. Her elbows were bent at stiff, unnatural 90-degree angles, shoulders hunched forward, wrists limp, long bony fingers dangling. The only way Adam knew it was his mom was the pajama top. It clung to her sharp, skeletal frame, stretched over the ridges of her spine, hanging loose around her frail shoulders. She leaned in, breast against the door, her head tilted, slow, deliberate, like she could see through the wood, tracking exactly where he was. And then, a whisper, "Honey, are you awake?" Her mouth didn't move, lips stretched thin, jaw unhinged and frozen in that grotesque, slack-jawed state. But the words came anyway, perfectly clear, perfectly human. "I know you're up, honey. I just heard you moving." "Yeah, I just moved some furniture around. I didn't like where my TV was." A pause. Then, the whisper again, perfectly clear, perfectly human. "Can I see?" Adam's throat tightened. "Tomorrow." He lied. "I'm naked right now. I don't want to get dressed. Please, please, please work." He was frozen, his face glued to his phone screen, not daring to look away from the grainy FaceTime feed. His breath barely made a sound. Then, finally, "Okay, tomorrow then." As she spoke, something shifted in the farthest, darkest corner past the stairs. At first, Adam thought it was just a shadow, but then, an arm, thin, brittle, dangling down from the ceiling, like a puppet on cut strings. Another arm followed, then a body, slow and deliberate, lowering itself down the wall. Adam's stomach turned to ice. Dad, did he ever even leave the house? Was he already this far along when he picked Adam up from the hospital with Mom? None of it mattered. He moved with absolute silence, clambering up the stairs as Mom whispered one last time, "Good night, son. I love you." Then Dad shuffled past her. Same stiff, unnatural cadence Mom had been moving with for weeks. If Adam weren't staring straight at him, he would have sworn it was still her. He went to the master bedroom, closed the door. Then, without making a single noise, he came back, a trick Adam would have surely fell for if he hadn't been watching them this whole time. He ended right behind where she was standing, and that brings Adam to now. For the past 2 hours, they've been outside his door. Every move he makes, they track it, through the wood, through the silence. It's 3:02 a.m. If he can just make it to daylight without passing out, Adam thinks he can open the bay window and jump. After that, straight to the spare garage. Grab the car, get the fuck out of town. He doesn't know how far this shit has spread, but he can't stay here. Oh fuck. They're getting on the ground, lowering themselves, peeking under the door. Adam might have to go right now. Okay, fuck. He'll update this when he's safe. Here, don't translate. Now translate when I say listen to me first. Comment for part 2.